Some of you are not exhausted because love has asked too much of you. You are exhausted because you have been carrying decisions God assigned to other people. That is a different weight. Service can be demanding, yes, but borrowed responsibility is relentless because it asks you to manage two lives while still pretending you have only one. You know the cycle. Another crisis arrives and immediately your priorities move. Your rest is postponed. Your work is interrupted. Your attention is redirected toward producing an urgent solution. You advise, arrange, remind, explain, absorb, and repair. For a moment, everything becomes quiet. Then the same crisis returns wearing different clothes, and once again you are expected to make it disappear. Now hear this carefully. Compassion is not the problem. Your willingness to care is not a defect. Do not punish your tender heart because you have used it without a boundary. The problem begins when care becomes ownership, when you stop offering a faithful contribution and start assuming responsibility for another person's response. Love may warn, but love cannot choose for them. Love may support, but love cannot obey for them. Love may remain present, but love must not abandon its own assignment in an attempt to complete theirs. Write this down. Help becomes control when your peace depends on another person making the decision you prefer. What do I mean by this? You want to protect someone from pain, disappointment, delay, embarrassment, or consequence. That desire may be sincere. But if every uncomfortable moment causes you to take over, then their discomfort begins governing your life. Their emergency chooses your schedule. Their hesitation consumes your thoughts. Their refusal becomes your frustration. And while you are busy preventing every consequence in their world, your own responsibilities wait quietly in the background. You may call this sacrifice, you may even call it faithfulness, but exhaustion is not always proof that you are doing the right thing. Sometimes exhaustion is evidence that responsibility has crossed its proper boundary. You may be tired not because love requires too much, but because control requires you to carry two lives. So here is the controlling question for this journey. How can you love and influence people without trying to live their lives for them? We are going to answer that question precisely. We will define influence, service, rescue, freedom, responsibility, and personal assignment. We will uncover why rescuing repeats and identify what it costs you, the other person, the relationship, and the purpose you keep postponing. We will sort one real burden into its rightful circles, build language for loving boundaries, learn a process for helping without taking over, and finish with a written decision about what must be managed, what may be influenced, and what must be released. You do not need permission to become cold. You need clarity to remain loving. And clarity begins with one sober possibility. Some of the weight exhausting you may never have belonged to you. If that burden is borrowed, then we must define exactly where faithful influence ends and controlling ownership begins. Then let us control the language before we try to correct the pattern, because you cannot change what you insist on calling by the wrong name. If every intervention is called love, and every sacrifice is called help, confusion will protect the very behavior that clarity is trying to expose. Good intentions matter, but intention alone does not determine ownership. Influence is offering truth, example, encouragement, resources, or appropriate consequences while leaving the decision with its rightful owner. Influence makes a contribution. It does not manufacture a response. You may speak clearly, demonstrate wisely, provide what is reasonable, and explain what will follow from a choice. Then you allow a capable person to choose. Healthy influence contributes what is yours while leaving another person responsible for what is theirs. Control is different. Control assumes responsibility for producing, preventing, or policing another capable person's choices and outcomes. It says, I must make this happen. I must keep that from happening. I must monitor you until you do what I believe is right. Do you see the difference? Influence respects agency. Control attempts to occupy it. Influence can remain faithful even when the answer is no. Control cannot rest until the answer is the one it demands. Now, define service. Service is a contribution that meets a legitimate need without unnecessarily removing the recipient's agency. Genuine service supports a person's capacity to participate in their own life. Compulsive rescue, however, is repeated intervention that absorbs work, discomfort, or consequences belonging to someone else. Service may lift someone who cannot presently stand alone. Rescue continually carries someone who is responsible and able to take the next step. Write this down. The question is not merely whether you helped. It is whether your help preserved responsibility or replaced it. And this brings us to assignment. Your personal assignment is the collection of responsibilities, development, relationships, and purpose requiring your stewardship. Assignment determines where your attention belongs. Something can be good without being yours. Something can be needed without requiring you to provide it. Availability is not assignment. If every need becomes your duty, distraction will dress itself as devotion and scatter the strength meant for your own stewardship. Very important. The same outward action may be service in one situation and control in another. Offering substantial assistance once may honor your role and meet a legitimate need. Repeating that assistance to prevent a capable person from facing the result of repeated choices may replace responsibility. The action looks similar, but ownership, role, pattern, and purpose reveal its meaning. Ask, whose responsibility is this? What is my actual role? Is this an exceptional need or an established pattern? Does my contribution strengthen responsible action or make continued avoidance easier? Say this until it becomes clear. Influence offers. Control takes over. Service strengthens. Rescue substitutes. Assignment focuses. Distraction scatters. Now bring these words into your most exhausting relationship. Which term describes what you are actually doing? Influence, control, service, rescue, or assignment? Do not answer according to your intention. Answer according to the responsibility your involvement preserves or replaces. Definitions reveal the pattern, but definitions alone do not explain why intelligent, caring people keep crossing a boundary they can now clearly see. The answer is found in the moment before you intervene. Something happens to them, but something also happens inside you. Their crisis produces your alarm. Their disappointment awakens your guilt. Their uncertainty disturbs your peace. And before you have decided what love requires, your discomfort has already volunteered you for control. Watch the cycle carefully. Another person faces a problem. You feel responsible, anxious, or afraid of what may happen. You step in, finish the task, provide the money, make the decision, or absorb the consequence. They experience relief because the pressure is removed. You experience relief because the situation is quiet again, but the responsible action remains unpracticed. Nothing essential has changed. So the crisis returns, relief becomes resentment, and resentment is followed by another rescue. This is why the pattern can feel righteous while remaining destructive. It rewards both people immediately. One person escapes responsibility, the other escapes emotional discomfort. Temporary relief disguises the transfer. Write this down. Sometimes you are not solving their problem. You are silencing your anxiety about watching them face it. That is a difficult sentence, but it is not an accusation. It is an invitation to honesty. Perhaps you fear conflict. Perhaps you dread being called selfish, uncaring, or difficult. Perhaps another person's pain feels unbearable to witness. Perhaps uncertain outcomes keep your mind racing. Or perhaps being indispensable has become part of your identity. When people need you, you feel valuable. When they begin carrying their own responsibility, you are not sure who you are in the relationship. Being needed is not the same as being faithful. Consider the neglected task at work. Your coworker fails to complete it, and you quietly finish it because you cannot tolerate the tension of a missed result. Consider the avoidable emergency you finance again because saying no would expose you to anger or disappointment. Consider the capable relative who rejects counsel but still expects you to make the final decision. In each case, ask, did I respond to a genuine request with a considered contribution, or did I react automatically to a feeling I wanted to escape? A response is chosen. A reaction is triggered. A response considers ownership, role, pattern, and purpose. A reaction seeks immediate emotional relief. One can offer help with boundaries. The other rushes to make discomfort disappear. Now, some of you learned over-responsibility early. Family expectations may have praised you for keeping everyone calm, solving every difficulty, or becoming dependable beyond your proper role. History can explain why taking over feels normal. It cannot decide what faithfulness requires today. Explanation should produce understanding, not permission to continue an exhausting pattern. So return to your most recent rescue. Do not begin with what the other person did. Begin with the moment before you acted. What feeling were you trying to escape? Guilt, fear, conflict, helplessness, uncertainty, or the possibility of no longer being necessary? Were you loving the person or protecting your identity as the person who always saves the situation? See the cycle without humiliating yourself. You are not condemned for recognizing your participation. You are becoming capable of changing it. But now the temporary reward must be weighed against the long-term price, because every repeated rescue sends a bill somewhere. Then open the ledger. The first account is your own peace. Repeated intervention spends time, attention, emotional steadiness, money, sleep, and the strength required for legitimate duties. You may solve the immediate problem and still carry the conversation through the night. Your body leaves the crisis, but your mind remains on duty. Eventually, you are present everywhere and settled nowhere. The second account belongs to the other person's growth. When you repeatedly take over, you may interrupt opportunities for them to choose, practice, solve, recover, and face appropriate consequences. Capability develops through responsible participation. If you provide every answer, absorb every difficulty, and prevent every uncomfortable result, the person may receive assistance without developing ownership. Notice the language, may. Support does not always create dependency, and consequences do not guarantee maturity. Some people receive generous help and become stronger. Others experience consequences and remain unchanged. Freedom includes that possibility. The point is not that every rescue produces weakness. The point is that taking over removes an opportunity they alone can use. The third account is the relationship's honesty. Help repeatedly offered without truthful limits does not remain generous forever. Unspoken resentment enters. You say yes with your mouth while protesting internally. You appear available, then become cold. You keep giving but secretly expect appreciation, change, or obedience as repayment. Meanwhile, trust weakens because one person is treated as permanently incapable and the other becomes permanently responsible. Write this down. Dishonest help eventually demands a hidden price. The fourth account is your assignment. Every hour spent managing the unfinished responsibilities of another capable adult is an hour unavailable for your growth, your family duties, your work, your rest, or your purpose. One interruption looks harmless. 30 minutes here, another 30 minutes later, one more before the week ends, that is 90 minutes. Repeat the pattern for 4 weeks, and 6 hours have disappeared not in one dramatic sacrifice, but through small emergencies that kept important, non-urgent commitments waiting. This is how purpose is postponed. Usually, it is not abandoned in one announcement. It is delayed by repeated diversions that always seem compassionate in isolation. You intended to develop, prepare, repair, create, rest, or become more present. But another person's pattern kept receiving the time your assignment required. Now ask yourself, which account is paying the highest price today? Is it your peace, their opportunity to grow, the honesty of the relationship, or the purpose you continue delaying? Do not answer vaguely. Name the account. Peace does not come from arranging a world in which nobody is disappointed, uncomfortable, or upset with you. That arrangement is impossible, and trying to produce it will keep you governed by every reaction around you. Peace begins with restored. Order your responsibility in your hands, their responsibility in theirs. Control charges both lives and distorts the relationship between them. So the next question is moral, not merely emotional. How can love remain active while choice and consequence stay with their rightful owner? The answer begins with freedom and responsibility. Freedom and responsibility must remain together. Freedom means another person possesses choices you were not assigned to make. Responsibility means those choices carry consequences the chooser must answer for. Separate these two principles, and love becomes distorted. Freedom without responsibility becomes license. I may choose anything, and someone else must absorb the result. Responsibility without meaningful freedom becomes domination. You will answer for a decision I did not permit you to make. Healthy love honors both. It refuses to abandon people, and it refuses to possess them. Your responsibility is the faithfulness of your contribution. You may be responsible for speaking counsel clearly, conducting yourself with integrity, defining the limits of your participation, and keeping commitments that genuinely belong to your role. You are not responsible for manufacturing another capable adult's compliance. You can tell the truth without forcing agreement. You can offer help without removing the next responsible step. You can maintain a standard without policing every reaction. You can allow an appropriate consequence without celebrating another person's pain. Write this down. Faithfulness governs my contribution. Freedom governs their choice. Responsibility governs what follows. That sentence gives us 3 territories. The first is what I must manage. This includes my words, conduct, time, resources, commitments, boundaries, and assigned duties. These are not matters to release. They belong to my stewardship. The second territory is what I may influence. I may advise, encourage, warn, request, demonstrate, negotiate, or offer defined support. Influence is real, but it is limited. I can make truth available. I cannot make another person receive it. The third territory is what I must release. This includes another capable person's final decision, private motives, emotional reaction, willingness to change, and response to an appropriate consequence. Release does not mean approval. It does not mean silence. It means I stop claiming ownership of what only that person can choose. Now be careful, because every principle can be misused by someone seeking an excuse. Parents of every people, caregivers for dependent people, and those holding formal leadership responsibilities may possess legitimate authority that requires greater direction and intervention. Emergencies, threats of harm, abuse, and legal or professional obligations may require protective action, reporting, supervision, or outside assistance. Release is never permission to neglect safety, evade duty, or ignore rightful authority. The question is not, how little can I do? The question is, what does my actual responsibility require, and where does it end? Mature love does not need possession of the outcome in order to remain loving. It can be compassionate without becoming controlling, courageous without becoming coercive, and present without taking over. So releasing an outcome is not abandoning a person. It is returning choice and consequence to their rightful owner while continuing to govern your own conduct faithfully. But a principle changes nothing until it enters a real relationship. Bring one current burden to mind. Which part must you manage? Which part may you influence? Which part must you release? Now we must place each piece in its proper territory. Do not attempt to reorganize every relationship today. That would become another form of control. Choose one person and one recurring issue, the situation that repeatedly captures your attention, consumes your resources, or interrupts your responsibilities. One person, one issue. Clarity grows through specificity. Take a sheet of paper and divide it into 3 columns. Write manage above the first, influence above the second, and release above the third. This is your ownership map. Under manage, record only the actions that belong to you. You may need to speak honestly. Keep a commitment. Protect necessary time or money. Set a limit on your participation, or fulfill a legitimate duty connected to your role. Do not write, make them understand. Understanding is not yours to manage. Write, explain my position clearly. Do not write, keep them from becoming upset. Their emotion is not yours to govern. Write, remain respectful when I communicate the limit. Now move to influence. Here you may listen without immediately solving. You may ask questions that require thought. You may offer relevant information, demonstrate a responsible example, or provide one clearly bounded contribution. Notice the word bounded. How much help? For what purpose? Until when? Influence must have a definition, or it will quietly expand into ownership. Then complete the release column. Write down the other person's decision, effort, attitude, timetable, response, and outcome. Yes, even their response to your boundary belongs there. You cannot place something under manage merely because you feel strongly about it. Emotion may reveal concern. It does not transfer ownership. Write this principle beside the 3 columns. Confusion loses its power when every action, decision, and consequence is placed beside its rightful owner. Now create a simple audit beneath the columns. Answer 5 questions in writing. What is happening? What is mine? What is theirs? What consequence do I keep interrupting? What will I change next time? Be honest about the fourth question. Perhaps every delay becomes your urgency. Perhaps every refusal becomes another explanation. Perhaps every unfinished step produces another contribution from you. The issue is not whether consequences feel pleasant. The issue is whether your repeated intervention prevents a capable person from encountering what their own choice produces. Test your answers. Was help actually requested, or did anxiety appoint you? Are you uniquely responsible, or merely the person most likely to agree? Does this help develop capacity, or does it replace responsible action? What part of your personal assignment is being displaced while you manage this pattern? These questions expose ambiguity. You may discover that part of the burden is genuinely yours and must no longer be avoided. You may also discover that much of what you call duty was fear wearing respectable clothing. The audit does not permit neglect. It requires accuracy. Finally, circle one behavior you will stop. Perhaps you will stop reminding, arranging, absorbing, or intervening before responsibility has been attempted. Then circle one rightful responsibility you will resume. A commitment, a conversation, a period of rest, a neglected task, or necessary preparation. Keep this relationship before you, because the map shows where ownership belongs, but pressure will return. When the next request or crisis arrives, you will need a repeatable way to help without taking over. The ownership audit tells you where responsibility belongs. Care tells you what to do when the pressure arrives. Many people take over because they have no practice response between concern and action. Care creates that pause. Clarify the request. Assess rightful ownership. Respond within role and capacity, and exit the outcome. First, clarify. Listen before you volunteer. Ask, what are you specifically asking me to do? A person may describe an entire crisis when the actual request concerns only one part. Do not accept ownership of the whole situation merely because you heard the whole story. Clarity turns general distress into a defined request. Second, assess. What duty truly belongs to your role? What influence is available? Is this an exceptional setback or a familiar pattern? What assistance has already been offered? Are there safety concerns requiring protective action? And, very important, what is the next action only the other person can take? If your help removes that action, you may be replacing agency rather than supporting it. Third, respond. Make a contribution with edges. You may provide information, share a limited resource, schedule a conversation, offer temporary assistance, or allow an appropriate consequence. Define what you will do, how much you will provide, and when your involvement ends. Mercy may meet an unusual hardship without creating a permanent arrangement, but repeated relief that makes irresponsibility easier is no longer serving the same purpose. Fourth, exit the outcome. Once your contribution is complete, return the next decision to its owner. Do not chase, repeatedly remind, improve the agreement, or perform the step they accepted. Their response may reveal their priorities more accurately than their promises did. Let that information instruct you. Here is the response ladder. Listen, ask, offer options, agree on the precise contribution, name the recipient's next action, and stop where ownership changes. Suppose a coworker misses a deadline and you feel tempted to finish the work. Clarify what assistance is being requested. Assess your actual responsibility, the effect on the shared work, and whether previous intervention has hidden a pattern. Respond by offering needed information or a brief scheduled review. Then name the transfer. I can review this portion with you for 20 minutes. You will complete and submit the final work. When the 20 minutes end, exit. Cooperation does not require substitution. Now consider a relative requesting another bailout after rejecting earlier plans. Clarify the amount and purpose. Assess whether this is a genuine exception or another repetition, what resources you can responsibly offer, and what action belongs to them. You might say, I cannot provide more money. I can meet with you tomorrow to review the available options and you will decide which one to pursue. That is not coldness. It is assistance that leaves choice intact. Write this down. Provide a bridge when appropriate, but do not become the road another person refuses to walk. Now draft your care response for the person and issue already on your page. Write the clarifying question, the ownership assessment, the exact contribution, and the sentence that returns the next action. Practice it before pressure returns. A sound process brings calm competence, but it does not guarantee approval. People accustomed to rescue may protest when responsibility comes home. That protest is the stress test. Identifying a limit on paper is one thing. Maintaining it when someone calls it rejection is another. The hardest moment often arrives after you have spoken clearly, when their disappointment awakens your guilt and you feel tempted to reclaim the responsibility you just returned. So, define boundary correctly. A boundary is a decision governing your participation, resources, availability, and conduct. It is not a command designed to govern another person's response. You must stop being angry as control. I will speak respectfully, and I will pause this conversation if insults begin. Is a boundary. One attempts to manage them, the other governs you. Write this down. A boundary does not decide what they must do. It decides what you will responsibly do. Use 4 parts when you communicate it. First, affirm care. Second, state the contribution available. Third, state the participation unavailable. Fourth, return the next step. The pattern sounds like this. I care about you. I can help with this defined part. I cannot keep doing that part for you. The next decision is yours. Notice what is absent. There is no accusation, no lecture, and no attempt to force agreement. Love is expressed. Help is defined. The limit is named. Responsibility is returned. Now, the other person may still be disappointed. They may protest, withdraw approval, repeat the request, or describe your change as selfish. Listen carefully. Disappointment does not automatically prove wrongdoing, and emotional pressure does not automatically create responsibility. Their feelings deserve respectful acknowledgement, but their feelings do not rewrite your ownership map. Do not weaken clarity by over-explaining. Excessive explanation often becomes bargaining against yourself. You state the limit, they object, and then you add exceptions until the limit disappears. Do not make threats you will not enforce. And do not disguise punishment as a boundary. I will make you suffer until you change. Is not self-governance. It is control wearing firmer language. A genuine boundary protects responsible participation. It does not seek revenge. Consistency is very important. A limit revised by every protest is not a dependable limit. It is another negotiation. You may repeat the statement calmly. I understand that you disagree. This is what I am available to do. You do not need a new argument for every old pressure. Compassion can remain warm while the decision remains steady. But steadiness must never become rigidity. Responsibilities involving minors, dependent care, abuse, immediate danger, or formal obligations may require intervention, protection, reporting, or continued supervision. New information may also require a wise revision. Consistency means remaining faithful to rightful responsibility, not refusing to think. Peace, then, is not the absence of another person's anger. Peace is internal order. Your conduct governed, your duty fulfilled, and borrowed responsibility released. Freedom must operate on both sides. They are free to disagree. You are free to maintain a responsible decision. Now rehearse your statement aloud in a calm, respectful tone. Affirm care. Name what you can do. Name what you will no longer do. Return the next step. Keep that sentence for your final written commitment. When your energy is no longer consumed by managing another person's reaction, it becomes available again, and that recovered strength must be deliberately returned to the assignment that has been waiting. Now, take the stability you gain from the boundary and give it direction. Release is not complete merely because you stop taking over. Recovered strength needs a rightful assignment. Remember the contrasts. Influence offers. Control takes possession. Service strengthens. Rescue substitutes. Freedom chooses. Responsibility answers. Assignment concentrates your strength. Distraction scatters it. These distinctions lead to one governing principle. When responsibility returns to its rightful owner, love can remain present and purpose can move forward. Write the name of the person whose choices you have been trying to manage. Beside that name, identify the exact decision, reaction, effort, timetable, or outcome you are returning. Be specific. You are not releasing the person. You are releasing your claim upon a responsibility that belongs to them. Then write this sentence: I will remain loving and truthful, but I will no longer assume responsibility for this decision or outcome. Read it slowly. Release is not indifference. It is truthful love. You may still listen, advise, encourage, pray, or provide appropriate help, but you will not confuse presence with possession. The purpose of release is not to care less. It is to become responsible again for the life entrusted to you. Now add the boundary statement you rehearsed. Name what help remains available, what substitution will end, and whose next action follows. That completes the first decision. Then make a second decision. Write, the personal assignment I will resume is, complete that sentence with the responsibility that has been displaced. Do not write a vague aspiration. Name the work, preparation, repair, rest, conversation, or development that properly requires your attention. Beneath it, record the next responsible action. Choose one boundary conversation and one assignment action for the next practical opportunity. Practical matters. Some conversations require preparation, privacy, counsel, or safety planning. Wisdom is not procrastination, and urgency is not always courage. Prepare properly, then act faithfully. Once each week, return to your page and ask 3 questions. What did I manage faithfully? Where did I cross from influence into control? What must I repair, release, or resume? This is how clarity becomes a practice instead of a moment. If you took over, correct it. If you spoke harshly, repair it. If you reclaimed an old burden, release it again. If your assignment drifted, resume it. If faith is part of your life, pause and ask for wisdom to serve courageously, release honestly, and steward your purpose faithfully. You do not have to carry another capable person's choices to prove your love. Loving people does not require living for them. Return what is theirs. Carry what is yours. Let love remain truthful. Let responsibility remain ordered. And let your life move forward in peace.